with glowing hearts we see rise, the true North strong and free. From far and wide old Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. 2 songs going on. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
These are patriotic Canadians.
Oh my God!
You're now attacking different older people.
You guys are disgusting!
Look at this fucking news Look. Look. You coward! You sound
We have nowhere else to go.
My phone dropped.
I hope it wasn't.
Anybody with us? I see you shaking your head back there. You should be watching this. Take a lesson in courage.
Man, they declared this called the Crusade.
Cowards!
Nazi supporters.
Now generation theory. Every generation. Law enforcement professionals, huh?
Oh, you got blown up in Afghanistan, eh? And these guys are going to arrest you and push you back when you serve for your country?
Right. You guys keep those pensions. Resign everybody else to serve them. Go for it.
I don't smoke. I'm dying. You don't know my life. You don't know my struggle. I fought for my shit. I survived the worst. This is nothing.
Tell your boss to stop it, huh?
I've been
Follow
blown
the
up.
law.
Peace and love. And if
No
you think
respect
he
for
does,
human dignity
you're wrong.
whatsoever. We're not livestock to make rich boomers. All serial killers are boomers. I almost said that.
We love you all.
All they want is to be heard.
Can I take a second?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I need a minute.
You are not a serf.
I did surfing once.
We want to
oh
do
man, I
the
hurt myself big
SERF.
too.
No, you don't want to go SERF. That's
Oh,
what these
no,
guys want you to do. They want you to go SERF.
Oh,
Nuremberg 2, boys. Can't wait to see you there.
I don't want to be here.
You guys' grandchildren are going to be born
I'd much
into
rather
debt,
be home with my wife and kids.
owing a piece of their lives to the state. Everyone's going to be free. That's a wounded veteran! Yes! That's a wounded veteran.
Yes,
That's a
sir.
wounded warrior right there. They got a key on his fucking head. That guy's Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up!
Hold on, stop pushing.
Back up!
They kicked him in the leg.
Back up! Back up!
Hold on, stop pushing.
They kicked him in the leg. The RCR guy. They booted him.
That was weird. There's the one. The one who booted him was this one. Kucher Lazon. He kicked the vet that had the wounded right leg. He kicked him right in the leg.
Oh, he's a greasy one.
This guy right here, Kucher Lazon. He kicked him.
Hey, what's up, guys? Saw you kicking that wounded veteran while he was down there earlier. You guys are a bunch of thugs, huh?
Didn't want freedom would stop everybody from having.
No, not at all. You want to keep the rich guys in power right now, huh? Soaking up all the wealth, buying up all those residential properties, turning the millennials into a bunch of permanent renters, reaching into the pockets of the unborn, resigning all future children to be born into serfdom. That's you guys. Abusing your citizens, huh?
I am the media now.
Just following orders, just like those guards at the ovens of Auschwitz. That's you,
Those financials are hitting up for all of our friends here.
right? You just do as you're told, right?
These guys are getting in.
Hey, what's up, troops? Jeff Avely here, Ops Sgt-Maj with Veterans for Freedom. Back with you now. I have joining me today Mr. William Ray. William and I have been corresponding over Messenger for a while, and I'm really excited to finally bring him on here because he's quite knowledgeable on a couple of subjects here that are a bit of a gap for me, to be honest. I'm a little weak in these areas. So I've been really interested to talk to William for a while, and I'm really excited to have him on today. But William, why don't you go ahead and give us the quick bio there, let us know who you are, and give us a quick intro to our topic today, which is the Kamloops Commie Color Revolution connection.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Jeff. And yeah, so I'm a combat veteran of the Canadian Forces myself. Me and the boys from 2PPCLI took a lovely tour down the Dalmatian coast of Croatia. Ended up near a town called Majdac, and had a little difference of opinion with the Croatian Federal Army there. So yeah, so I guess
Go ahead and explain what that is, William. Just go ahead. The Battle of Medic Pocket.
Oh, sure. Well,
for anybody who doesn't know.
Yeah, well, about me and around 780 of my very close friends decided to take on around 8,000 guys from the Croatian Federal Army who were in the process of ethnically cleansing an area that came to be known as the Majdac Pocket, a bunch of Serbian villages in a Serbian area of Croatia known as the Krajina. They began their offensive about the 13th of September. Our guys tried to negotiate a ceasefire. They wouldn't. On the 15th of September, we dug in, stopped their advance, and then we pushed them back out of what was called the United Nations protected area. And yeah, and then the Canadian government at the time, proving that a broken watch can be right once in a while, actually flew in a bunch of RCMP forensics techs, and they went through the place like a crime scene. And so everyone, I believe, above the rank of major that we faced that day is now sitting in a dark little hole in the ground in Holland, having been convicted of crimes against humanity. So a decent win, really. So yeah, so I guess from that experience, I certainly got a firsthand view of what identity politics can do in a hell of a hurt. Because at the end of the day, people that had been neighbors, had grown up together, hacked each other's heads off and put them on spikes, right? And this was in the same village. Like half the village would burn the other half out.
Yep.
Right. That's how strong this stuff is. This victim identity politics is.
It's just tribalism.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said it's just tribalism.
Well, it is very analogous. Yeah. And it's terrifying for sure.
Yeah.
The other part of that is I was very, very, very tangentially involved in, and I'm sure you know this from Afghanistan, in whole of society operations,
right?
Basically, where we are coming into an area to peacekeep. So, we insert ourselves into the media, the education system, the governance system, and in our case, we're putting out the consistent message that indeed cutting your neighbor's head off and putting it on a spike or burning his house down is probably not conducive to your general future welfare. So please refrain from any future activities like this. Yeah. But so when I first spotted identity politics and stuff come in, and I guess I would say politically I came from the traditional Canadian left. Like I have a lot of credentials. I took the Montreal Police Department to task for their treatment of independent journalists during the student strike, and I forced them to the table. I come from that side politically, and so I watched this become inserted into sort of left-wing politics very forcefully. Like people were told either you conform to this or you're not welcome in our spaces.
Yeah.
Right. And it was very quick and very hard. And at the exact same time, the same thing is happening in academia, and academia is suddenly deciding that boys and girls don't exist and all white people are evil and we got studies to prove it. It's okay. And at the exact same time, government starts passing regulations geared to this. So, I mean, when I saw a whole of society operation, I recognized it. Right. So I started writing and researching, because, I mean, I have a duty, I think, to leave the place to my son, at least what I got. So in the course of that, among the many things I've run into is the idea of color revolutions. So I'll just go into a quick backgrounder. Some of this is going to be a bit sort of fire hosey, but I'll send a bunch of links you can stick up in the comments and whatever. So it's probable that some form of what I'm going to call color revolution theory has been used in warfare since the Greeks and the Syrians. In the modern iteration, probably the first very coherent example of this is the taking out of Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran in the 50s. And this is not a basement Alex Jones conspiracy theory. There's been a lot of academic work on this. The principals have admitted it, and the stuff's all declassified. We have the checks drawn on the Melli Bank that the CIA paid to demonstrators to go out and have riots, which then brought in the police and military, which took over the country. And so one of the base concepts here, I guess, to understand is the Hegelian dialectic: problem, reaction, solution. Color revolution theory is based very heavily on this. The idea is that any society or group will have some element of it that has grievances, because that's the nature of humans. You can't have a family that doesn't have grievances.
Right.
So you want to go in and you want to exploit and magnify those. And at the same time, you want to give people that want to act up against the greater society all the tools to do that in a greatly magnified way. That's sort of the base theory. So the CIA goes into Iran. They don't like what Mohammad Mossadegh is doing. They go into Iran. They find people that don't like Mohammad Mossadegh, and they provide them with a ton of money. They provide them with vehicles. They provide them with posters. In those days, printing presses, that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure.
And then they gear up the external press to start saying, oh, look at all these people. They ain't happy with this horrible communist Mossadegh guy. And of course, they've got their people in cities in Iran causing these huge demonstrations. But again, a lot of these people are literally paid. And we're going to touch back on that again when we get to the blockades. Moving forward from that, in 1990, a man named Gene Sharp writes a book at the University of Chicago. And I go ahead and Google the history of University of Chicago, Rockefellers, that kind of stuff.
Have some familiarity, yeah.
Yeah. So this book is called From Dictatorship to Democracy, a Conceptual Framework.
I know it.
So, yeah, okay. So this book has been used as the Bible for every color revolution, and the iteration in the 2000s of this for sure starts with Ukraine, Georgia, the Orange Revolution, the original Orange Revolution, and goes forward through a bunch of other Soviet republics. This was funded, the original Orange Revolution, very openly funded by George Soros, right? Yeah. And I invite people to Google the situation around the presidents and the poison and the whole. It will look reminiscent to what's happening in Ukraine today. Big production number.
Okay. So tell you what, I got something for you.
Yeah.
Demonstrators clash with police, with hundreds of thousands protesting the results of the election and calling for a new vote.
Perfect, yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of pro-democracy Ukrainians in the streets today protested
Can you pause it for a second?
The presidential election, pitting their candidate, the West-leaning challenger Viktor Yushchenko, against the pro-Moscow.
If you could go back just a little bit to the crowd scene with the flags, that's very important.
This one?
A little bit forward, a little bit. Sorry.
This one.
Yeah, right about there. That's good. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look in that crowd, you're going to see this tons of orange flags, and as you go forward through this footage, you'll see tons of orange flags. And indeed, that's where color revolution gets its name. Every one of them will have a central symbol or color or something, right? In this case, it was orange.
It was green in the Arab Spring, I think.
Yeah, it's green, or there was a symbol. There was I think the bulldozer revolution in Serbia, and I suppose that's really where it kicks off. 99 in Serbia against Milosevic, and many of the activists that did that, called Otpor, would have been present in 2005 in Ukraine, and that's been documented.
Roger that.
Right,
Okay.
and this is Gene Sharp. Gene Sharp. You need a central symbol. You need a central color. BLM fist. I don't know more. Whatever it is, you need a central symbol. So we can go ahead and.
I was just going to say, that's a really good lead-in for what, if I recall correctly, what comes next here. So.
Ukrainians in the streets today protested against the results of the presidential election, pitting their candidate, the West-leaning challenger Viktor Yushchenko, against the pro-Moscow Prime Minister Viktor Yanukovych. They claim Yanukovych's victory was rigged, with reports of ballot stuffing and voter intimidation.
Last night, the country's election commission ignored reports of fraud, declaring Kremlin-backed Viktor Yanukovych the winner. Far from backing down, Yushchenko has called for a nationwide strike, warning the country is on the verge of civil war.
If they shoot us, if they send tanks, no matter what, there's nothing that can overpower the will of the people.
Meanwhile, overseas in Ukraine today, anti-government demonstrators finally had something to celebrate. The parliament voted to disband the government of the candidate who has been declared the winner of the disputed presidential election.
The ruling called for a revote in 3 weeks.
Doctors confirmed that opposition candidate Viktor Yushchenko was poisoned during
the incident.
NBC's Pat Dawson reports.
The effects were startling.
Sorry, did you want to add something there, Will?
Well, just if you think about the situation in Ukraine today, we keep getting all these incidents, right? The Russians bomb Ukrainian apartment building. Oh, well, actually, no, it was the Ukrainians. The Russians hit Poland with a. Oh, wait a minute, no,
it was Ukraine.
So this is what swung it. Suddenly, this guy was supposedly poisoned. So let's go ahead.
Okay.
The healthy, vibrant opposition candidate for Ukraine's presidency transformed in a matter of a few weeks this fall into a gravely ill man. His face almost overnight changed into a scarred, bloated mask.
In Kiev's Independence Square, where the historic protest began over a month ago, opposition leader Viktor Yushchenko joined his supporters in a victory celebration early this morning. With most votes counted.
You saying something there?
No, that's it. No,
okay.
No, go ahead.
The Western-leaning economist leads by an insurmountable 9 percentage points. He thanked the hundreds of thousands who had taken to the streets to demand democratic change. Earlier, his opponent, the Soviet-style Prime Minister Viktor Yanukovych, looked defeated but conceded nothing and predicted more turmoil ahead. I am ready to lead, he said, but if I lose, Yushchenko will find out what opposition really means.
So there you go.
Yeah.
That's your brief intro. It's your color revolution in Ukraine and the kind of history that we're dealing with there. So where do we go from there, Will?
Well, the thing is, so this was really picked up in an organized way by the Obama administration and big tech. Shocker, shocker.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they did is in 2008, under the cover of something called the Alliance of Youth Movements, an org that has since either disappeared or morphed into something called Movements Org. This thing was massively financed by George Soros and Open Societies. So in 2008, they held the first of 3 major conferences. They had one the next year in Mexico, and then the year after that in London. And we'll put a pin on that because there's an interesting tie to big tech today. So this was like an orgy, like an incestuous orgy of big tech and the Obama administration, State Department, and so-called civil society. And when they say that, and they call this sort of civil society 2.0 is what they called it. Mm-hmm. But what they did, and they had, okay, so I'll just read some of this here. In 2008, the Alliance of Youth Movements held its inaugural summit in New York City. Attending this summit was a combination of State Department staff, Council on Foreign Relations members, former National Security staff, CIA, Department of Homeland Security advisors, private military contractors, and a myriad of representatives from American corporations and mass media organizations, including AT&T. We all remember the services they did for the previous fascist putsch. Mm-hmm. Google, Facebook, NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, and MTV. So, isn't that fun? So basically what this was a massively funded get-together, and what they had, this would have been just prior, if people want to cast their minds back, this is just prior to the kickoff of what we call the Arab Spring, right? Where, first, it goes through all these countries in the peninsula. Mm-hmm. So what they did here is they got together and they provided high-end, not just networking, because this is activists from all over the world. And one of them, one of the folks that attended this, we are going to meet in a little while. Her name is Sheila McLean. Put a pin in that. Okay. So this was a how to organize grassroots movements using the connections they were making to big tech, right? So they're in the room with the executives and future executives, like, think this is 208. So a ton of the people that went for Facebook, Google, all that, they're now senior execs.
Yeah.
Right? So they went there, they got together, formed connections, and how you can start your own Arab Spring anywhere. How you build the media image, how you project it, how you use language. And they got guys from the, you know, the CI, we're going to kick your ass. Hey, these dudes, whatever you think of them, they know their business. They've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, they get stuff done.
Yeah, so they, and I mean, the list goes on and on. I would invite, we'll put the link to this global research in the, so this is 2008 in New York City. There's another one, 2009, Mexico City, which is introduced by a live video from then Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton.
Queen of warmongers.
In 2010, the summit was put on in London, and one of the people that put it on was, where are you? Where are you? I know you're here. I got you.
You can you share screen over there?
No.
Oh, okay.
One of the people that put it on was a woman named Tessa Barra. Okay. And Tessa Barra, in her old, you know, sort of resume, very much boasts about the work she did with this summit in London. She went on to become one of the heads of YouTube currently, is what she does.
I'm not sure, maybe I could get it in the comments if something just happened with William's mic or with my earbuds, but
can you hear me?
I can hear you, but the pitch of the audio just changed dramatically over here. Anybody notice that? Oh, there you go. You're good now.
Oh, okay. So yeah, Tessa Barra, who hosted this thing in London in 2010, went on to become now a very senior executive at YouTube, which might not be a surprise. So, yeah, so they continued this on, and the whole time they're connecting all these people with these big tech and how you start one of these movements. So let's get back to Sheila McLean. Does everybody remember Idle No More?
I think just before you continue there, William, I think what's happening is when you look away from your mic, we get like a really tinny sounding audio coming through.
I will not turn my head.
All right, when you turn your face back to the mic, or just keep the mic in front of your face when you're looking, whatever works.
Okay, so Sheila McLean is one of the 3 women who founded Idle No More. She is not an Indigenous person. She is a professor at the University of Saskatchewan who attended one of these summits. And so I'll just give you a quick example of her academic work. We Built a Life from Nothing, White Settler Colonialism and the Myth of Meritocracy. In this paper, she goes at lengths to pillory her grandparents who scratched a farm out in Saskatchewan back in the 1800s about, you know, just what useless scumbags they are. So, okay, so this lady put this, what she learned, into practice.
Okay. Right.
And there's a puff piece from HuffPost here. Where are you? Oh, where are you? Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry, it's not HuffPost, but basically, so it's a piece about how these women got together mysteriously and started Idle No More. And yeah, it starts out that, oh, you know, when I started this Facebook group, I had no idea that this would happen. But that's not true. That's not true. They had the HuffPost and everybody else already wired in to report on it as being this grassroots Indigenous movement in Canada. Now, I have to admit, I got taken because I was an independent media in Montreal when Idle No More started up there. The lady that ran it there now has a very high position with the David Suzuki Foundation.
Nothing left wing going on there, is there?
Well, hey, right.
At the David Suzuki Foundation, there's nothing left wing going on there, is there? Okay.
Lots of money. So yeah, so she and I should have picked up on this, I guess, because I already knew about color revolutions. I just, I was, very, what would I say, sympathetic to Indigenous rights and this and that. So, but when I think about it now and look at it, yeah, all the signs were there. They had these multi-$1,000 vinyl banners suddenly in every town and city in Quebec. And, yeah, there were other signs, especially the international media attention, immediate international media attention. Yeah, so they start Idle No More. Now, Idle No More, the purpose it really served for what we're talking about is it built connections in Canada between some Indigenous activists and most importantly, some organizations that exist in pretty much all Canadian universities called public interest research groups. Okay. These things are student organizations. The one at Concordia University that I'm familiar with that was headed by Jaggi Singh was funded to the tune of $250,000 a year. Right now, one of these at every university in Canada, I don't know if they're all 250 grand, but they're in that ballpark. So think about that as a combined budget. Right now, they can also, because they're non-profits, even though like every student has to give money involuntarily for these groups, they're non-profits and charities, some of them, so they can also apply for all kinds of student, government grants. Now, say if you're the Liberal government and you're very, say, ideologically aligned, you get a lot of grants. So we kick forward from the Idle No More. Those connections are made. In 2018, 2019, 2018, the Roll On for Canada convoy left from out west. So this would have been, I suppose, a predecessor in some ways of the truckers convoy. 2 weeks after they announced they were leaving for Ottawa, there was a call out done by a group called Power Shift Youth and Rising.org, funded by CUPW, 350.org. I mean, pretty much every union in Canada, Unifor and the rest of them. This was the training ground for the rail blockades. They literally have training sessions on rail blockades. They also spent an afternoon learning how to rappel, and one of the guys that made the initial call out on video for this thing is pictured hanging off a rappel cord underneath the, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Capilano Bridge or the Patello Bridge going out of Vancouver, when they blocked the tankers or the ships there.
Not sure.
Whatever bridge it is, he was hanging off one of those bridges.
Okay.
He didn't learn to hang off that bridge in the Canadian Forces or anybody else's army. He learned how to do that at a workshop held at Carleton University in Ottawa between February 14th and 18th, 2018 or 2019. I'm spacing on the year, but I can throw it up there. Yeah, it's that direct. I mean, they trained in blockades, and many of the people that attended, they flew people in from all over Canada. It was basically a mini version of what they were doing in New York. So they got them ready. So then they pull the blockades. That's who you saw blocking those rail lines. It was these university kids organized by the Purgs and shipped around Canada.
Yeah. Okay, so what I'm curious to know, I guess, there's a lot of different not-for-profits and NGOs involved. But they don't actually generate any wealth. So what are we thinking in terms of the ultimate source of funding here?
They're conduits. They're conduits for the
corporate they're conduits, but for whom?
They're conduits. And this has been known for a long time. I found there's like a 60 Minutes piece or something back from the early 70s or mid 70s about how the growth of these nonprofits and its involvement with the CIA, because this was during the church committees and stuff, and how they were using them for political purposes, laundering money. you know, we've seen over the years people like George Soros, and of course the Rockefellers have had a huge foundation for years. And these things, you know, there's academic work on philanthropy and what's really behind it. A lot of it's class interest, you know. So that's where this money's coming from. The assault on Canada didn't begin with Justin Trudeau, and it didn't begin with COVID. We're in the end game, not in the opening skirmishes.
Yeah, I agree. I'm one of those guys that's been getting called paranoid for, you know, over a decade now.
Well, everything I'm saying here, I can back it. So anybody got any questions, I'll go ahead and send you the proof.
Well, I got a question for you from a regular watcher here, and this is Caroline Wadner, and Carolyn, sorry, and she's asking, what about Greta?
I mean, I haven't dug into Greta, but I think it's pretty obvious. Parents are connected. You know, I mean, I think it's.
I'll recommend Kean Bexley, maybe. I think Kean Bexley did some pretty good work on that back in the day. He tracked her right down to the school where they.
Yeah, I don't think she has much influence anymore.
No, not anymore. I think I've even seen some reporting that she's kind of flopped and is kind of saying that she got exploited back in the day. It's only been a couple of years now, I guess. But,
well, you know, I mean, she's a little girl who has some disabilities, who was exploited by her own parents. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And they really downplayed her disabilities. Like, she was in a special needs class when they dug her up. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I can't. I think it's pretty obvious. But I don't have specific information about that young lady at all. The climate, if you want to kick the climate dipshit's ass off, it's real simple. You can do the math. I got an article for it, but you can do the math. So every person who lives in a northern climate like Canada puts out 7 times the energy footprint as someone who lives in the global south. So if you move millions of people from the global south to the global north, here in Europe, England, places like that, you're exacerbating climate change. The reason our countries aren't big emitters is partly because we don't have massive populations.
Mm-hmm.
So the 100 million people in Canada are the same people barking about climate. It's all bullshit. So that's what I can tell you about climate.
Yeah. I did a good clip on the last live stream that I did there. I really enjoyed. He was an astronomer, and they were talking about warming, I think, in Britain, and he was explaining how it was due to solar and lunar activity. Of course, the journalist was.
Well, here's one for you. I mean, here in Nova Scotia,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Here in Nova Scotia, right? The climate nuts will go on about the fact that the ocean's rising in Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
Every geologist on the planet can tell you the ocean's rising in Nova Scotia because there was a big dent put right beside Hudson Bay by about 5-10 miles of ice. And that dent has been coming out ever since. And, you know, like when you put a dent in a soccer ball, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it's called geostatic rebound, Canada.
Okay. Is that the Hudson Bay itself?
Hey?
You mean in the Hudson Bay itself?
Right beside it, I think, is the 0 point, but it's where geologists figured the ice cap was thickest. It caused an isostatic depression in the globe, in the crust.
I have an alternate theory, actually. I read a book one time called the Cycle of Cosmic Cataclysms, which actually isn't about a cycle. It's just about a signal event. And they theorize between, I think, the 3 or 4 authors that are geologists and astronomers and blah, 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 that there was a nearby star that went supernova, and they pinned it right down to the star, which is currently a brown dwarf, and the debris would have taken a few centuries to get to the inner solar system. But the bottom line is that comet hit North America, created the Hudson Bay, the Great Lakes, and they did a whole like splatter pattern Dexter style of all these lakes and rivers.
Sure, those Finger Lakes and stuff. Yeah, Randall Carson.
Finger Lakes, exactly.
Yeah, I'm on that with you for sure. There's questions there. The story we've been given, but. That's why I think COVID's exciting. I view it as a good.
Hang on, I got let's see. Here's one coming from Matt Cross. He's I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, Matt, but he's a veteran for freedom, and he says, "Ask William how much training that lady had with the ground search machine trying had." I think he means the ground penetrating radar at the residential schools.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, we got you, man.
Well, we're getting there. We're getting there. So we got the rail blockades pop up over the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs, right?
Oh yeah. Okay,
so
sorry.
this is the indigenous crisis before the mass graves. So this pops up. Now the office of the hereditary, because they're not, I mean, it was women about 10 years ago. They fired the women, hired these guys. I've got the financial records of open societies handing the office of the Wet'suwet'en chiefs over $3 million in 3 years. And a buddy of mine, he's even got the video of it.
Wow.
He even went in, he talked to the chiefs themselves. So I got a video of it in the article. So what they did is they set up the office of hereditary chiefs. They hired a couple of ex-cons to be hereditary chiefs.
Yeah, it's like when Donald Trump set up the office of the ex-president, that kind of thing.
I suppose, yeah, sure. Because there is and I'm not a fan of the Indian Act, but there is a democratically elected band council in chief under the Indian Act that is being completely and illegally ignored. Right, and I can turn you on to a Wet'suwet'en blogger who has been going off about this long before the blockades, about these white guys coming in here and running the place with a couple of shysters in front of them. So
yeah, I remember back in the day, like the Wet'suwet'en guy. There was one guy that they put out front there. He was sort of the front man of the whole thing. You saw him coming in and out of the parliamentary buildings on the news for these negotiations.
With his little outfit, I love that.
He had like a criminal record, didn't he? He was.
Yeah, he beat the shit out of his wife a bunch of. Yeah, well, you want corrupt people. You want people who are going to do what you say, because they ain't never going to get another job like this. Right? That's what you want. I mean, look at Trudeau.
Yeah. And you had a process, a democratic process that took, I don't even know how many years to get, I think it was a couple of dozen different bands on board with the pipeline in the first place. And they all agreed that it was going to be, ecological and economical. It was supposed to go ahead. And then boom, all of a sudden there's this office of the former president, the office of the hereditary chiefs, and there's some lowlife wife beater acting as the front man.
Well, sure, that's how it works.
Yeah, and that's how they got those pipelines shut down. So
sure, exactly. So but the logistical, and I think this is important to understand. The logistics of that has to do with these PERG groups in the universities. That's how they can turn it on and off across the country and make it look like indigenous people are rising coast to coast. But you look behind the black mass, there aren't that many indigenous people.
No, they're tokens too. I find it really gross. What they're doing with a lot of these demonstrations, like they're using racial minorities as tokens. And you're right, it is college kids engaged in the majority of the activity.
Yeah,
but I go after
the statues, all that. That's college kids. Yep.
I go after the professors, though. It is the professor class that's radicalizing the millennials. It's not the millennials' fault per se, but it's the boomers. Actually, I do a lot.
Right, but again, I mean, and this comes back to the funding. Like, where's all the money come from? Because it's like any crime, all of the money. So the thing is, a lot of people, I think, need to understand how universities actually work. You think that your government gives them some money and they go teach your kids. No. Most of their money comes from private foundations and corporations because they fund the research. So the only research gets done is what they decide to fund. So let's say, if the corporate world wanted to severely influence society, so yeah, I mean.
You mean like they would provide grant funding with strings attached to stand up communist indoctrination programs masquerading as legitimate academia, that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, communists, they don't care what you call it. They're not communists, Marxists, fascists, or any other kind of is. That's for us dipshits. They want to be in charge, point. They don't care. As long as the system has them in charge, what it looks like. But yeah, essentially, you're dead correct. I mean, here I wrote an article for Quillette, an Australian publication put out by Claire Lehman. Got like 13 million original views last I checked a couple of years back, and it was about maybe, right?
I said we got a problem with your mic again.
Oh, are we better?
I don't know. No, I'm still getting a tinny. It sounds tinny for some reason.
Oh,
I can hear you, but it sounds really tinny. I tell you what. Oh wait,
maybe if I put it down. Oh, is that better?
Oh, it's just tinny for some reason. It's really it's echo. I got this going on. I don't know. Do you have a headset or something? Is it?
Me, no.
No. Okay. I don't know if it's maybe just reverberating. But okay. Maybe I can dive into an article here while we see if that mic sorts itself out. Okay, so this is from the CBC. Now, you know, I tried like heck to dig up the original articles on this stuff that said that there was a mass grave at Kamloops, but they don't. They're few and far between. I even went into the Wayback Machine a couple of times, but I guess ultimately I just ran out of time and I didn't find any of the original stuff. But I'm sure
it all for you if you want it.
Always that'd be great, yeah. But the I'm sure everybody remembers, like, this was the headline. It was once upon a time it was about a mass grave, and this here is how radar technology is used to discover unmarked graves at a former residential schools. And this is the CBC, and obviously this is to be taken with a grain of salt because it's state propaganda. But we know that you know they're not on our side. So. It says ground penetrating radar was used on the grounds of the former Kamloops Indian Residential School and indicated the remains of 215 children could be buried at the site, according to the Kamloops First Nation. And here's the operative word in that subtitle there, folks. It's could. So it goes into all this stuff before the first electromagnetic waves, any radar device surveying spectrum. Okay, so I'm a radar tech. So what we're talking about here, they're talking about a ground penetrating radar, but I'm just going to go ahead and scroll down a little bit, and we like the visual aids around here. So this is a picture from the report, I guess, the radar report. And basically what they're saying here is that these, well, I'll read this. It says a profile view image from a ground penetrating radar survey shows reflections produced by known graves. The two upside down U shapes are subsurface reflections from the material that differs from the native soil, in this case, metallic coffins.
So that's a trick. That's a trick, because they're not showing you what they found there. They're showing you one upgrade.
That's right. This is like the reference category, okay?
Well,
and what they're saying.
Can you scroll up a bit to that picture of a ground penetrating radar unit? There you go.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Okay. So this is likely the type of unit that she used. This is not what a real archaeologist or anthropologist would use. It's a much more complex setup that involves two long metal beams being held like meters apart.
Yeah.
So she used inadequate equipment to begin with. Now, the woman that used it is named Dr. Sarah Bellew. Dr. Sarah Bellew is she just got promoted to full professor at the University of the Interior, British Columbia.
Well, you're still having a real problem with your audio there. I don't know if you want to try to mute the mic. I'm going to just remove you from the stream for a second and bring you back in. And and I don't know if we can kind of reset if it's a software glitch or what it is. Go ahead. Oh, hang on. No, you got to unmute your mic from your end.
Hello.
Oh, a little gruff, but we'll back on.
Okay, so this lady, Sarah Bellew, did some work with ground penetrating radar a few years ago, actually sponsored by the United Nations and the Ukrainian Congress of Canada, looking into World War I internment sites for Ukrainian and Eastern European people. So she has one in Fernie, BC. She did a UN-funded documentary on it that played all over the world, talking about how we, was some kind of concentration camp. The reality is it was an abandoned mining village that several Eastern European, Ukrainian families were moved into. They had all been working as hard rock miners up the road, basically. So they move them in there, they give them chickens, they give them seed, and they just have to live there. So I'm not going to defend that, but that's what happened.
Right.
She built a narrative because she found a can of something or other, and through analyzing their fecal matter, that we were starving them. She found a bit of an old tin, and from it built a huge narrative. She also found a wooden shovel, like literally the spade of the shovel is wooden. She asserts that this is proof they were trying to dig their way out of their town on the side of the Rocky motherfucking mountains in Fernie, BC. A bunch of hard rock miners are going to try to dig out with a shovel made of wood. No. So her only testimonial evidence comes from descendants of people that were there. It's completely unverified. I'm sorry, that's not history or science.
No, indeed. I was just going to talk about the science just a little bit here. And I never worked with a ground penetrating radar, but I did work with a ground radar, a synthetic aperture radar, when I was in Afghanistan. So I can tell you that all that thing can detect is soil disruptions. It's not like an X-ray, folks. It's a radar, which is radio detection and ranging. That means that you're taking a radio frequency, you're blasting it out at a high power so that whatever it hits, it's going to bounce off, come back. You catch that same ball that you threw out there the first time, you just time the return so that you know how far it traveled. With an X-ray, okay, what you're doing is you're putting a piece of film behind somebody and you're blasting an X-ray right through it onto the film behind it. And whatever makes it through is passing through flesh, and whatever doesn't is hitting calcium, your bones. So it's completely different technology. We can't see into the ground and see bodies and see bones and stuff like this. What we're talking about is a practice of what they're calling ground penetrating radar. But my understanding of how radar works indicates that like the penetration part is a bit of a misnomer. It's probably being used as shorthand for a processing technique that they use on the returns. Okay, anyway, it says a profile view image from a ground penetrating radar survey shows reflections produced by known graves. The two upside-down U-shapes are subsurface reflections from a material that differs from the native soil, in this case, metallic coffins. So the mass graves narrative falls apart on its face because the technique that they're using is only useful when you're looking for coffins, as in graveyards, as in people buried with care, not
metal.
Metal for that.
That's going to give you a hard return. So nice pick, CBC.
Yeah. And by the way, like, this is at a time when most people were being buried in wooden coffins. And the reason that we've lost these graveyards is because a lot of the grave markers would have been wooden as well. They would have been, and this is all part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's mandate to find these last grave sites. It's all in the report. And as it says right here, like, this was not a surprise. They were looking in the area anyway for these abandoned graveyards. And as it says here, I want to point out again, we're looking for graves, not mass graves, not a mass of people bulldozed into an open pit and then buried, because that's not going to produce these kinds of radar returns. For that, you require coffins. So that's all I want to say about that. This is the the press report that they released, and it says, and I think this is the same lady probably that you're talking about. But I'm just going to point this out. It says, this past weekend, with the help of the ground penetrating radar specialist, with the stark truth of the preliminary findings came to light, the confirmation of the remains of 215 children who were students of the Kamloops Indian Residential School. So they took that preliminary, as it says right here, preliminary radar report, not even a final report, and used that to say the confirmation of the remains of 215 children. So no remains have actually been exhumed. And they said there was something about a rib that they found there for a little while, but now they've lost it.
No, Rebel knocked that out of the park. It was the only person who said it was a rib was an ambulance attendant.
Okay.
I have an FOI from the BC Coroner's Office stating that they have no file number, they have no remains, they have begun no investigation.
Yeah. And William and I actually kind of bumped into each other in that space. It's funny because I'm pursuing some legal action here in Nova Scotia as a result of, a couple of arrests that I've mentioned before on the program. When I was defying mask mandates before the trucker convoy and stuff like that. I have human rights complaints left, right, and center for denial of service. And we're all pursuing that stuff now because of the Nova Scotia Court of Appeals handed down that decision that said that all of the mandates were illegal, violated everybody's human rights and fundamental freedoms. So we have that to rely on in Nova Scotia. That's great. Anyway, I found a document filed somewhere. I was researching one of my cases and I found William's signature there. And we were already messaging over Messenger, and I was like, hey, is this you? And sure enough, it was. So anyway, it's interesting that we're all meeting each other now in this ideological battle space. It's a great thing. And this is the report that they put out. It's the best thing I could find anyway. I mean, I keep searching this title, and it's a pretty specific title because it's not English. Obviously, I'm not sure what you would call what they speak, to be honest. But
it's a Haida dialect. It's a dialect. Haida dialect.
But again, we're not seeing a radar report in here anyway. There's mention of the ground penetrating radar here. It talks a little bit about who is overseeing that and stuff like that. And there's a lot more about just the overcoming the trauma through spiritual exercises and stuff like that. But I don't see anything again in terms of radar data.
Or any schedule to begin any exhumation or anything else. And I mean, I'm sorry, but you found a mass grave full of my relatives.
Yeah.
And no, that's okay. What?
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, this was a pre-planned narrative. Again, the protests you saw and all that, the statues coming down was pre-planned, guaranteed.
Well,
right?
I was living through it, and we're coming up on Canada Day, and it's the half-masting, and in defiance of the rules on half staffing, you never do that on Canada Day, and and it was out of nowhere. There are all these orange shirts, and I was like, "Where did this come from?"
Well, let's go back to Ukraine now, kids.
Right.
Let's go back to Ukraine. You need a symbol.
That's right.
With a feather or whatever. Oh my God. If I saw one more goddamn Facebook post with "bring the children home" and these creepy little images of little kids standing in a graveyard. Holy shit. Are you? And I mean, I'm sorry, man, but I have actually been at the side of actual mass graves.
Right.
Right. Where a bunch of humans were just dumped in a pit and somebody maybe threw a bit of dirt over it. Yeah. Fuck you.
Yeah, you know what? I remember I'll share an experience with you while I was in front of the Justice of the Peace during my second arrest in Ottawa there for going back for Rolling Thunder. The prosecutor was showing pictures of Canadians being stomped by horses and calling it a war zone. And I don't know what he was implying about my character, but apparently it was a really bad thing that I went back to this war zone. And my lawyer piped up and said to the JP that, point of order, it may be insensitive to call this situation a war zone to people who've actually been to war zones. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, you know, unreal, you know. But here's a little bit of the immediate chaos, I guess, that came in the immediate aftermath. So here's Queen Victoria.
And when you compare the cutting of the rails, attacking of some trains, cutting of highways to what you guys did, and so the blockades went on for what, 2 months, 3 months, off and on.
Yeah, that's right. The rail blockades, the throwing of the flaming debris on the tracks in an attempt to actually disrail the train.
No emergency act, boy, because these are this is something the Liberals were entirely waiting for. In the same way that the Democratic Party is connected to BLM, they are connected to this. And you can call it idle no more, the wet's a wettin', bring our children home, whatever you want. It's the same group.
Right. It's the same people engaging in the same, essentially, Maoist campaign.
Look at the timing of the mass graves and the blockades, almost to the, I mean, it's not quite to the day, but right, you know, lead up to Canada Day. Oh, here we go. Nope, don't celebrate that. No, you're all bad. Bad.
Yeah, that's right. But here's some of the footage here from the Manitoba legislature on Canada Day.
Al Jazeera.
Yeah, I kind of like to show some. I like to show the propaganda from the other side, be it the left or our adversaries. You know, just get a different perspective on things. And the Guardian. So yeah, this would be UK. Here's what they said over in the motherland. Oh.
No pride in genocide.
Yeah, so you'd probably want to, yeah, those black flags are interesting. But yeah, the orange shirt, I mean, yeah. I mean, how did they print them that fast? Because they were already printed.
Exactly. And they were everywhere. They were already like distributed like across the country. So
absolutely. And now would have been done
during a supply chain crisis.
I guarantee you that the people that printed that were the pergs all over Canada, because that's exactly what they do. They print flyers. They provide you with computers. They and they have huge budgets. They can bus people around, no problem.
And
very warm welcome. Let's start in Canada. Canada's national holiday has been marked by protest following the recent discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves at former schools for Indigenous children. Thousands of people joined a Cancel Canada Day rally. Catherine Corelli has this report.
Traditionally, a day of celebration. But this year, Canada has found itself reckoning with its colonial past. This was the scene in Winnipeg. Demonstrators pulling down a statue of Queen Victoria. Across Canada, thousands of people took to the streets, protesting a dark chapter of Canada's history.
And if you have a look at the crowd, you will easily see that behind the front row, no, these are mostly feminism studies majors.
Exactly. These are middle-class white people.
Right there. Oh, geez. Yeah, no pride in genocide. So these guys have connections to literally Madison Avenue type advertising firms. They have the people at Facebook and this and that. So, you know, that's where you get these snappy-ass slogans.
Yeah, 100%. Just to put a fine point on this, because I know some people might be really concerned, and this wouldn't be the first time that I would be accused of racism for discussing a sensitive topic, but it's clearly not racism here, folks. This is just about what is true and what is not. Here's Angela Stirrit. She is author of Unbroken, and she's an investigative journalist. Appears to be Indigenous to me. She's saying that the Kamloops chief, Roseanne Casimir, is providing an update to the media, and the community is letting the journalists know that this is a trauma-informed press conference. This may be something very new to non-Indigenous journalists, but very familiar to Indigenous ones. So this, as far as I can tell, this is an Indigenous journalist, basically just kind of providing the update to everybody attending the press conference. But what's interesting about this is when you scroll down a little bit, here's one of her replies to her thread here is, "This is not a mass grave. These are preliminary findings. We will be sharing the written report in the middle of the month." So she said it herself. And what is this?
Yeah, but it didn't matter. I mean, when they went to Saskatchewan there, and for the most part, Indigenous people have been very honest. When they went to Saskatchewan, these couple of old ladies and this old fellow were like, "No, I don't know about that. I mean, this was a bunch of white people over there at a graveyard."
Yeah.
But we had Mr. Guy go out and get, like, what was it, 700 little dollar store candles and stick them out there.
Yeah. But nowadays, while I was preparing for this this episode here, I was searching around Google, and like I said, I couldn't even find the headline, the mass graves headline again. But the good news is that nowadays this is the top headline on your Google search, and this is New York Post, which is a bit right-leaning, but I think it's also the oldest newspaper in America, so it's very mainstream. And it says the title is "Biggest Fake News Story in Canada: Kamloops Mass Grave Debunked by Academics." So we can go all the way through this and everything. It says, but not really. It's here's a quote. "We had knowing in our community that we were able to verify, to our knowledge, these missing children are undocumented deaths." So that's not the same as a mass murder, right?
Sure, but the thing is, you got a couple of things in terms of sort of warfare in the information space. People generally, it doesn't matter how many times you come out with even a full retraction, they don't hear it. They hear the first headline.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I wanted to go back to this too, just to kind of reorient everybody, because it's all doom and gloom these days, but I see signs of the tide turning all the time.
Sure.
And this is one of them. I mean, this is an in-your-face headline from a mainstream source. So I think that's it's a positive development.
It is,
from my perspective.
Well, I mean, and again, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and all you guys, that video you played at the start there. I mean, to everyone that was in Ottawa, like, really, like, thank you. I mean, I could not get there. And I mean, you guys, and you're still winning every goddamn day in that bloody inquiry. I
got to catch up with the guys. I hope tomorrow night. I hope I can scrape together a little panel and stuff. But
oh wow,
I've just been saying, like, I haven't been reporting on it every day or anything, but every time I show some clips, I'm like, just look at how our side is totally outclassing theirs. Our guys are carrying themselves so well, and you got Paul Chump there, asking Tom Marazzo if Jeremy McKenzie's lawyer is Jewish. I was like, this is high school stuff, guys.
But just on the facts, the shit that is coming out, and it's just an unredacted version of who these people really are.
Mm-hmm. The text messages are very revealing. Like, how many tanks can we get?
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, I haven't seen a beating like this, Jesus, since the back parking lot on Blues on White. You know, it's like a bad bar beating watching you guys smack these dorks around. So that's, but it's going to take a ton of this. I think Miss Lynch had it completely right in that our strength is the fact that we're not some hierarchical thing you can attack. We're just a bunch of people. Right?
Yeah, and I thought I showed a clip of her, and I was like, "This is why she's the queen of the convoy, the queen of the freedom movement, right here." Because they asked her. I think the narrative that they were trying to paint in her case was that she was more motivated over the oil and gas stuff than she was over the mandates or something like this, because of some other political activity or letters that she had written or something. And and then they were like, okay, so what was it that motivated you? And they gave her a chance to speak, and it was just right from the bottom of her heart. And she was tearful, and she talked about the suicide rate in her hometown and how they stopped reporting them because there were so many families torn apart. And it was all just a very heartfelt sort of personal experience that I thought, man, even if you're on the other side of this, you can't help but feel that one, right in the heart when she's
sure.
When she's talking. So I think that was a really big win for us.
Absolutely. And the other side, I mean, from my perspective, I'm watching the other side there, and they come off looking nothing but arrogant, authoritarian.
Yep. And they're just snobs. They're just kind of blue collar hating snobs. And I mean, I think we should do another segment or something, because you and I were talking a little bit about Jody Thomas when she gave her testimony, and just what a good case study that would make in
I just did an article on her, man. That lady has been filthy all her life. Her daddy was a vice minister of defense. She had a swift ride to the top. She got busted for giving a ship contract to a company where her son worked for, a massive ship contract.
Right.
When she was ahead of the Coast Guard out in BC, she messed up some oil response.
Okay, I'll tell you what, William. This is a little bit of a thread, a little bit of a tangent that we're going down here, but I didn't plug your media at the start, so I might as well throw it out there now. William has his own blog here. It's Stormhaven Media. So go check them out there. Just great topics, man. And here we have Jody Thomas and Canada's Public Service, The Banality of Evil. Nice title. It says...
I love that quote by, what's his name? Boutros Ghali?
What's that?
At the top in the picture.
For your mind and your ass will follow.
No, this here in the yellow there.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was going to ask you about that one, though. For your mind and your ass will follow. Pretty sure it's from a song. Okay.
It is, yeah.
In Cairo still applies. Yeah. It says the lesson I learned in Cairo still applies. The only way to deal with bureaucrats is with stealth and sudden violence.
But it's Boutros Ghali. He got like a peace medal and shit.
Yeah.
I figured I'm covered.
what was he at the end of his career? He was the
he was the head of the United Nations when I sorted off to Yugoslavia.
Yeah. But anyway, this is a quick one. I'll throw it in just to plug your stuff here. And again, like great topics and everything on this website. So great job, William. It says, we have now learned through the Emergencies Act inquiry that the sole official voice labeling the brave Canadians camped out in their capital city a national security threat was Justin Trudeau's hand-picked national security advisor, Jody Thomas. So who is Jody Thomas, this operator that has the acumen to discern fundamental threats to our national security that our heavily funded security agencies completely missed? Primarily, as you will see, dear reader, Jody Thomas is a character member of the pack of rancid vermin we jokingly refer to as Canada's Public Service. These haughty mandarins are neither very public or transparent, nor do they actually provide much service to Canadians. The average starting wage is $60K a year, plus massive perks and union benefits. This is 5 times the Canadian average. Most of them do much less work per day as a Walmart cashier. They are mostly still working from home because COVID. Despite this, their soulless ranks are growing so rapidly. They provided Stats Canada with a falsely rosy picture of Canada's economic state. These belligerent bureaucrats didn't miss one of their huge paychecks in the 3 years of brutal restrictions that they themselves ruthlessly levied against Canada's citizens. In fact, they have been the beneficiaries of a torrential downpour of bonuses rained down upon them. This on top of millions of special payments for home renovations. So, yeah, that's a good point on the home renos too. Huh?
Whoa. Well, I mean, we can do some synthesis here because the other part of the equation we're dealing with right now is a marriage between these civil society groups and the civil service of all the Western nations. Over the last 20, 30 years, senior bureaucrats have gone to private foundation get-togethers to improve international civil service. Mm-hmm. And so we've got ideologically aligned people. And yeah, I mean, we have almost an aristocracy in terms of, I work it for the civil service because my daddy did, you know, sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, I think we've forgotten there was a great BBC series. It's funny as hell. It's called Yes Minister from the 70s, 80s. And it's about exactly this, that in all democracies there exists a permanent state in the bureaucracy. And the whole show, this guy gets newly elected to parliament and he's going to do this and that, and he meets for the first time with his sub-minister, which every minister has a senior bureaucrat who's really his equal.
His deputy minister.
Yeah, the deputy minister. Yeah, okay. Because these dicks get their...
Jody Thomas came from the deputy minister's position at National Defense too.
That's where she gave some money.
Jumped that sinking ship right around the time that the current general there, Woke Wayner, was probably taking his position on the condition that he imposed the vax mandate on the entire force. So,
well, there's a direct relation there because she was involved in some of the ship procurement that they went after Vice Admiral Norman for. He was supposed to be the CDS. Then there was another guy supposed to be the CDS. A couple of them, and unfounded sexual allegations, and here comes Woke Wayne, who was in Croatia with me, by the way. That little fuck.
That's all I keep hearing about him.
Hey,
that's all I keep hearing about him. Please continue.
He was. Well, he was a fucking brown-nosing little sack of trash as a lieutenant, and he hasn't changed. Yeah, so they slid him in because obviously they know at some point Ukraine is going to go off because they're going to keep poking the fucking Russians in the eye.
Yep.
And I mean, I can't even. Don't even get me started. That's a whole podcast. Unfortunately, I will have to go here pretty quick. I got to get. Yeah.
If I could take your attention to kind of one more thing here,
sure.
Because we were talking a lot about the statue toppling and this kind of a theme. And this is kind of near and dear, I think, to a lot of our hearts as veterans. But this is the Proud Boys incident that the 5 military guys, the Halifax 5, have some of the original cell phone video here of the interaction. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but
sure.
It's 8 minutes, and I just want to give you sort of a flavor for what's going on here, at least.
You can put your arms down. You don't need to stand there.
You believe that?
We're just
I didn't say
Brad,
I just say you don't need to come. So he's got to stand this way. A lot of rules. Got a lot of rules.
All we're asking is instead of walking directly to the
Grant. Nico. It's Grant there. It's Grant. It's Grant. Get that. Yes. Nice to meet you, Rob.
It's really nice to meet you.
Absolutely.
All we're trying to do is have a ceremony here. Ceremonies happen all the time, and this one is particularly important. Great, and we're just asking, we'll respect your ceremony as long as you don't need to run.
We're not here to
Great. All we're asking is that you go around instead of having to do the part.
No, we're curious about what you guys were saying. Exactly.
Great. You want to listen quietly?
That's all.
Then let's listen quietly.
This is a flag. Sorry, what? In Canada?
Are you insane?
Can we quiet down, please? Yeah, no.
Okay, so the respectful thing that we're trying to say is this is the land of the Mi'kmaq, which is predates Canada.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
So
what we're
this one gets a little hostile here.
Sure.
Well, I mean, yeah, but like, was it always Mi'kmaq land?
Yes, it was.
Did they ever come from anyone else? Was this
No, it has always been unceded Mi'kmaq territory.
before the land bridge there, right? Yeah. Was that after that?
The land bridge has been disproven. So you may.
Yeah, they kind of conveniently forget about 3 treaties there. I don't know if
Well-
they understand what unceded means.
Yeah, and it wasn't a surrender; it was a treaty. It was an agreement, and the result is basically the Indian Act, which I'm against. I think it's an apartheid system. But
We can redo it. We can redo it, but this ain't the way. So, I mean, if I can quickly comment on this before I got to go.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, if
And
you wanna play
you know,
that.
look, I'm just going to skip ahead to the end here, and you can see, like,
Sure, do it.
you know, so these guys are berated, intimidated, threatened, cursed at. They didn't swear.
I didn't
They didn't yell.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know.
I don't gotta know somebody. No, I don't like them.
Show us where what's
Go away.
We're gonna have to show you.
Go away.
You need to leave. That's not fine.
How are we white supremacists?
Go away, but you can't even say supremacy.
And they politely walk away. So I don't want to keep you too long there, William. I understand you got to go, but this was a really big deal there in the CAF. And you know, you got the general here. I got another clip of him, but he's saying all you have to do is be within the range of could, because they were asking what specifically were they disciplined, what rule did they break, and I'll show you the rule. I can infer from his comments that it's QRNO 1914. And this is the one that says no officer or non-commissioned member shall make remarks or pass criticism tending to bring a superior into contempt, except as may be necessary for the proper presentation of a grievance under Chapter 7. No officer or non-commissioned member shall do or say anything that A, if it heard or seen by the public, might reflect discredit on the Canadian forces or on any of its members. So might is actually the operative word there, folks. I said could, but it was might. And if seen or heard or reported to those under him, might discourage them and render them dissatisfied with their condition of duties on which they're employed. Okay, so that's a bunch of military jargon and stuff. But this is how they got these guys. They did them on the administrative measures, which is like remedial measures that can lead to release. None of them ended up released over this. Somebody, I think, quit. Yeah, they get put on remedial measures instead of charged. It's one of those things that they kind of grease people with, I think, and they're doing right now, pushing everybody out for not taking the vax on administrative measures and saying that they're disobeying a lawful command when nobody's actually been brought to court-martial for disobeying a lawful command. Because go ahead and try and make that case to a real court, right? The theme that I find that I see is that Canadian veterans seem to be a target very often of these kinds of campaigns, the kind of shaming and gaslighting and stuff like that. So I just I thought I would maybe get some thoughts from you on maybe where that's coming from, or if you're tracking that at all.
Yeah, I'll give you my quick thoughts. Okay, so I researched the lady who supposedly was shaving her head and all this, and she isn't the chief of anything in BC, although she refers to herself as one. I checked out with the association.
The chief from the Proud Boys incident was Chief Grizzly Mama, by the way.
Yeah,
Not a real chief.
So what I would say is interesting there is always remember this is a Hegelian dialectic, and both sides of an argument can be your adversary. The Proud Boys, real suspicious group, real suspicious. If I had my real comment there would be my suspicion is somebody wearing one of those black and orange or black and yellow t-shirts wasn't actually their friend, and they walked them right into a setup. That would be my opinion of what happened that day. Right?
Okay.
Because it was just too perfect. And I'd be willing to chat about that, but I really do have to go.
Okay.
I'll blast you a bunch of links for your comments, and I would be happy to come on again, and maybe when I have a bit more time.
Sounds great. We'd love to have you back, William. Thanks a lot for taking the time, bro.
Thank you for having me. Cheers, everybody. Ciao.
Take care. All right, so that was William Ray, folks. Like I said, I kind of bumped into William in sort of the ideological battle space, I guess, and it turns out that he's been at this longer than I have. Like I keep saying, I've only been out of the military for a little over a year now, maybe 13 months. So I'm meeting all kinds of new people, and it seems that William is a force to be reckoned with out there in the ideological battle space. So really happy to have him on, and we'll be having him back on the show again. I can guarantee you that. So with that, I'll say thanks for joining me, guys, and stay frosty and stay safe out there, troops. End.